Okay, we are recording now. All right. Welcome, everyone. I am super excited to be interviewing Mia Moran today. She is someone who's inspired me in my life so much and has helped me so much to get organized. And she is an author, an entrepreneur, a life coach, and a mother of three. She developed the flow method of organizing your life that is especially helpful for mothers who have to balance, all the demands of family and work and of course self-care. She calls this system Plan Simple, which is an awesome name. We all need simplicity. And Mia is with me today, and we're going to discuss how she's getting through this lockdown, and also she's going to give us some of her secrets of how to stay sane and balanced during this time. So, Mia, welcome.
Thank you, Cindy. Thank you for having me. This is
Thank you
so
so much
fun.
for being here. And I'd like to just begin with telling us a little bit about your background, how you started. You have a very interesting story. So just give us a little bit of background.
All right. Well, I'm a graphic designer by trade. That's what I thought I would be doing my whole life. And it's funny because it's ended up trickling back in a little bit. But I went to art school. Thank goodness. It was a meandering path, but I found my way there. And quite soon after art school, actually, I became an entrepreneur and opened my own firm. And I was able to scale that, working for a lot of universities. We did a lot of work for universities, and helping them get online, because that's how long ago it was. Like, people were just starting to get online, and have multiple websites and all those things. So I was doing that, and it was great. And during that, I had my three kids, and it was just this great setup of, working near home. And we had a babysitter, but like, she would bring the kids to me, and it was so good. And it was kind of everything I had always wanted. But I got to this point when I had the three kids. The oldest one was probably around 5, so I had three kids under 5, and I wasn't feeling as fulfilled as I thought I should be, having all these things. Like, I was married to the man I met in high school. I still am. And I had these three beautiful kids, and we had this apartment that we had bought with, with our own money, which felt so, well, it's like literally everything I wanted. It even had a white picket fence. But I was just, not happy, and I couldn't figure it out. And the most tangible thing that I could figure was that I had gained 85 pounds in my pregnancy. So basically, because I had three kids in these 5.5 years, I was either sort of pregnant or nursing for that amount of time. And I just had totally lost connection with my body. So the step that I took was, the first step I took was, I was like, okay, I'm just going to move my body. So I went to a yoga class, and in that yoga class, I met the owner of the studio. And for whatever reason, because I'm a very shy person normally, this isn't my personality, I introduced myself to her at the end of class, and I told her what I did. And she was like, perfect, I need a website. Can you come to my house tomorrow? And that started this journey into me figuring out food, because what she also did was, she was like a food coach. So I literally overnight decided to change what I was eating, and it changed everything. And I tell people the weight melted off, not probably because it actually did in a month, although I think it was all very fast, but because I just, like, my emotions changed within a week. So it was like, in a week, I felt like I had done all the therapy, even though I hadn't talked to anybody. Like, I just felt so good, and things that I didn't even know were wrong with me got better. Like, I haven't had allergies since. And it was just such a validating time. So that was sort of the beginning of this new journey, which led me to where I am right now, of just really starting to understand how food could affect my body, which eventually led to me understanding that my daughter had similar sensitivities to me. So then I sort of figured her out. And then I started to understand how this all worked as a family, because I fully was making the kids mac and cheese while I was getting myself super healthy. And I was like super healthy. I was eating all raw vegan and like feeding the kids crap for a while, just because I needed to learn. And then I brought them on board, and that ended up being the book that you were referring to, Plan Simple Meals. So this is a book that sort of combines healthy food, but also how to parent through it. And with that book, what I ended up doing was taking the kids out of school for a year and going on the road and talking to parents all over the country, but actually even not parents, because I spoke at a lot of sort of plant-based conferences. And the more and more people I talk to, the more and more I realize that the people coming out to this kind of talk were actually like already knew what to do, but they weren't finding the time to do it. And so their frustration was less in that they didn't know that they were supposed to eat more veggies or how to even do that sometimes, but that like literally they didn't feel like they could do it because they didn't have the time. And so that was what really led to what I think is my life's work, which is really more about how we're managing our time in a more balanced way so that we can be well. Because
So this is your flow program that
yeah, and it landed in a planner, so I got to be a designer again,
yeah.
which was fun.
And I just like to, actually, I'm going to bring that up onto the screen just so that people can see. Let's see, I'm going to share this. Let me see how I can get that up there.
You're so organized.
I am a little bit organized here. Okay, so this is Mia's program that I'm going through still, and you can see this is her planner here. And do you want to just talk about it as we look at this?
Sure. I mean, basically what I did after I figured out that no one was making the time is I really wanted to understand why. And for sure, like my my love was really to help moms, which I define kind of loosely as women, because I end up working with a lot of people whose kids have long left the house. So I don't think it's that you have to have toddlers running around. But I feel like what happens as women is we become these we've had to adopt a system that isn't really ours. So the idea that like we make goals in January and then we have to do them for a year, and we have these resolutions, and the idea that like we reset ourselves every 24 hours, like those are all very male things. Like men really do reset their bodies every 24 hours. And maybe the January calendar and the year really works for them, but in many traditional families, like they weren't riding all of the waves of the ups and downs of having kids home, not having kids home, sick kids, not sick kids, all the things that needed to happen. And so I just found that like the planners that I was buying, I would buy these planners in January and I would be so excited about my goals, and then all of a sudden I would like skip a week because there was vacation or a sick kid or something. And I would feel so stupid at the end of it that I had skipped this time that I wouldn't go back. And then I would like wait until the school calendars came out in the summer, and then I would get a new planner. And it was just like this endless cycle. And so I just want
to pause you right there because
yeah.
I want people to understand a little bit of what you're talking about in terms of the way women look at time, because we're talking about time, right? And I think what you're saying is that, are you?
Sorry, my computer keeps doing a buzz, but now it's gone.
So what I'm hearing you're saying is that women have more of less of a linear way of looking at the world, and women have a more secular. So we look at cycles, and we have cycles, and we have to deal with cycles. And so in Mia's planner, I'm going to just sort of put myself up here just so that you can see a little bit. She has, these are all like just, you do 3 months at a time. So like there is 3 months and there's like 3 months during the year. And each of these have questions that you plan out. Like the first page, which I just love, is, first of all, like, how do I want to feel during these 3 months? And that's the first thing you ask. And then you look at the flow process, which has to do with 4 elements. And do you want to say what those 4 elements are?
Sure. The 4 elements are food and wellness, which is where this all started from, obviously. But what I realized is that food and wellness was a piece, and we didn't believe that all the pieces could go together. So food and wellness is the F. Lifestyle, which is sort of, your home, how you're spending your days, like what you're doing in your lifestyle, travel, all those things fit in lifestyle. The O stands for which I consider sort of spirituality, self-care, quiet time, like the resets that we tend to need and not build into our lives. Planning can be part of the and work and our work. And very often we look at our lives in these silos, but we don't see how they go together. So like with the food thing, I would hear over and over people saying like, all I want to do is show up to a healthy family dinner with my family. But then they take out their work schedule and like meetings would go to 5:45 and they had to pick somebody up and then they had to get home. And by the time they were home, like it just wasn't even possible.
Yeah.
So it just wasn't like, it wasn't matching. And so that's where, the time became really important, just to declare in advance. And very often, a lot of it is that I don't think as humans, like women are super intuitive and we're really good at knowing what we want if we give ourselves the space to figure out what it is that we want and need. But as human beings, and women included, like we're not necessarily so good at doing that in the moment, because very often what we need is hard, like right when we're learning to do it, right? So very often there's some steps that like when we decide we're only going to eat healthy, we have to get through the steps of wanting to crave a pint of chocolate ice cream and not having it. And that's not always easy.
No.
But if we know we want that and we make a plan for it, then it's just like it makes it a little bit easier for us to make the right choice in the moment, because we can start to believe that we made that choice for ourselves just in advance.
So I want to ask you a question, because I want to get to now what we're doing,
Yeah.
now with this lockdown. And I think everybody's having a hard time with food and media. Those are the two things, because you're locked in and it's like, what else can you do but eat and watch like Netflix, and also, being able to get outside when, a lot of the time it's raining or we've had some bad weather or whatever. So I'd like to know how you, Mia Moran, who has become really proficient at the flow, how are you dealing with this lockdown, and what are you finding are your secrets on how do you eat well, and how do you, especially getting your kids to eat well? I've heard so many parents, mothers saying, my kids just want to eat all the time, and like, how are you dealing with this?
Well, so there's a couple parts to that. Like one, I actually believe it's a really good time for families to sort of get conscious together, because we're all, stuck in the same house all day long. And so one of the things I found my kids are really wanting to do is have some independence in the kitchen. So they've like taken it on, and it's not always the healthiest things, but they've decided they wanted to learn how to bake things and cook things. And I actually think that that's hugely empowering. So what I haven't been doing is buying a lot of pre-made junk, which I don't usually do anyway, but I'm empowering, like they can make things as long as they clean up the kitchen. And that's been really, really fun to watch. But I mean, the first step is always just meal planning, which is a little harder right now because a lot of us are trying to only go shopping every 2 weeks or as minimally as possible. So it's just really like putting it all down. And the way I always start meal planning is I switched how I think about it years back, which is I always start with vegetables. So it's like, what are the vegetables that would last for 2 weeks? What are the vegetables that we need to eat right away? And I just start like listing out, like, so we could start in the first week, we could have a lot of salad. So we could have like salad, and then we could do this vegetable with it. And I start by that. And it's not that we don't eat animal protein in our house, or we don't, need protein and grain, but I just start with that and I build that way.
So
And that's really helpful. Yeah.
I just want to say, hold the phone. What you just said is revolutionary, because who starts with vegetables? That's always the afterthought. And it's always like, oh, did I eat any vegetables today? Like, that is amazing to start with that.
Yeah. So I that's what I start with. And really at this time, I think we have to be conscious, like you couldn't buy all lettuce because that will go bad. And so it's like, what are the things, berries and lettuce and all those things go bad quicker, like zucchinis and sweet potatoes, and, the harder things stay a little longer. So how do you like create this progression? So we do that.
Any frozen vegetables or frozen? What do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have frozen peas. And actually something I learned years ago from Dr. Furman, who's like a big eat your fruits and vegetables doctor, is that frozen berries or organic frozen berries are actually probably the cleanest berries that we can get, because they've been vine ripened, whereas a lot of the things that we buy fresh have not been vine ripened and then frozen right away. And a lot of the things that we get fresh have been sprayed not with pesticides, but with stuff to keep them fresh at the grocery store. So frozen fruits are actually amazing. And so smoothies are actually another huge way that we get fruits and veggies in. And one of the things that I'm finding in this quarantine time is super helpful is that breakfast and lunch stays pretty consistent. Like we choose between like oatmeal and smoothies pretty much. Sometimes there's some avocado toast in the mix, and then we have, some, usually like a big like we have this consistent thing of what we do for breakfast and lunch, and then we get more inventive for dinner. And that's really helpful to, like, if you feel like you're being stuck. A lot of, I think, women feel like they get stuck in the kitchen during this time because it's like one ongoing weekend of like meal after meal
Right.
after meal.
What do you do? Then let's just talk about snacks. What do you do for snacks?
So smoothies make a great snack. Sometimes, we just bake stuff in advance. We always have nuts and seeds and, dried fruit. We have a lot of fruit. We're getting a lot of apples and oranges and stuff that doesn't go bad. And having tea breaks, but it's weird. I haven't found the snacking thing so much like as I thought I would, but that hasn't come up so much in our household. And I think it's just because we're staying really active but that hasn't been such a thing. So, but that's part of my plan is like, what are the snacks for this week? Because I've definitely heard it in my community. So one of the things that we've been doing a lot in my community is, especially when there's younger kids in the mix or you feel like you're snacking a lot, is just in the morning when you make your breakfast, figure out what's for lunch or prep as much of it as you can and make some sort of tray or basket that's the snacks for the day. And so it's, again, that idea of deciding in advance, right? Because the second we see a bag of potato chips at 7:30 and we're like sitting in front of Netflix, we're going to eat the whole bag. But if we decide in advance what the snacks are for the day, then we can choose to keep one for the Netflix time, but we also could choose to eat it earlier.
And I want to say, just in your book, and this is probably backwards. I don't think mine is like forwards, but Mia has in her planner a whole week's worth of like planning a menu.
Yeah.
And I find that to be so helpful because at the beginning of the day or even a day in advance, I can plan what I'm going to eat. And I always notice that if I'm planning what I'm going to eat, that day or the day before, I always eat healthier than when I'm just grabbing stuff along the way.
And also, it's not even food, but if you're finding that you're not getting stuff done now, which is also something I've heard a lot from people, like the amount on a normal time, like when we're going to work and we're doing all the things that we normally do, that we think about food in a day. So think about just like a day, and like you're going through the day and you're wondering, like, do I need to the grocery store? I wonder what we're gonna have for dinner. Like, actually, I'm not really craving that. And all the thoughts, sometimes those can take upward of an hour a day. Right? So think of how much time that is, like over and over and over again, that we're thinking about what we're going to eat instead of just deciding and being done with it. So actually deciding frees up so much brain space for other things, for concentrating at work.
So this is what I hear from people, it's like, well, I don't know what I'm going to feel like eating then. So like, what do you say to people when because like to commit to something on paper is like, I'm going to force myself to eat that at that time. What do you say to people when?
Well, so I can buy that for a week. Like that maybe if you plan on Sunday, like, and you're sick on Thursday, that you're going to want soup and not the thing that you said you wanted. But if we're talking about like, wanting chips and salsa while we're like watching a football game, or, like wanting to eat the whole thing of brownies instead of one, I say that's just not true. Like, I just think that that's our excuse. So, and to be honest, like, I think we have this idea that food is entertainment, but food is nourishment. Like the point of food is so that we don't have to take medicine, like so that we're healthy, right? And so if we start to just change what our understanding of why we're eating is, we're eating because we want energy, we're eating because we want to live longer, we're eating because we don't want to get sick right now, right? And there's so many things we can do with food right now to actually help our chances of not, getting coronavirus or not getting sicker when we do have it, right?
Exactly. And that saying that do you live to eat or do you eat to live?
Yeah, exactly. So I think there's some of that, like, yes, maybe you won't know on Sunday that you're going to be, want soup instead of salad on Thursday. So you can have some flexibility, but I really do believe that 24 hours before a day, if you can decide, if you can just reconfirm to yourself what it is that you're having the next day, like we can all do that.
So in terms of in the way you do it, just out of curiosity, do you fill this page up completely for the week, or do you do it daily, or how do you work your food plan?
I plan for the week just because I've found even before this time, but definitely during this time, that it's way more efficient to go shopping once, if I can, because otherwise I'm like, oh, I don't have that. Oh, I need that. And it's more expensive and less efficient.
Mhm.
So I definitely plan the whole week. But I do some flexible things. Like one of my favorite meals is, I call it grain bowl. And it's one of the ways that's easiest to integrate this idea of starting with vegetables. And what a grain bowl is in our house is it's 3 different kinds of veggies, a grain, and a protein. And so I sort of put that all out on the table. And it was my way early on to like make it okay that one child was just having beans and rice, but I was starting with like broccoli and kale and whatever, and having like the beans and the rice as a fifth and a fifth. And over time they would watch, and now everybody eats all the things. So it started off as that, but it's like, it's also a very useful tool for being healthy. And so in that case, like I could switch out a vegetable if I changed my mind, or I could change the idea of the sauce I was going to have and make it Asian instead of Italian, right? Like, so there's certain things I could do if I really wanted some freedom in there. But the choice of like, but actually I don't want the vegetables, instead I'm just going to go eat all the ice cream. Like I've learned about myself that I'm like, okay, what's really going on? Like, why do I want the ice cream? Like, it has nothing to do with the food. It has to do with the fact that like I had a hard day, or,
You
I'm
deserve
bored.
it. It's a reward. Right. So food is entertainment and reward, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Before we go on, I just want to I want to show everybody your book here. This is on Amazon, and I just look at how beautiful you look. And this is what the book is called: Plan Simple Meals, Get More Energy, Raise Healthy Kids, and Enjoy Family Dinner. What a statement to begin with. But I just want to show my viewers. So these are 50 plus gluten-free and plant-centered meals included. And just going to the contents here. I love how you've set this up. It's a really different type of a cookbook. Do you want to just talk about your steps? You have 7 steps here.
Yeah, so I mean, you started by asking, like sharing that beginning part of the flow planner, which is part of it too, which is just the idea that if we can start everything that we're planning for, whether it's food or what we're working on, or like if we're going to clean our house, that we're actually starting with the intention, with like how we want to feel. And so that's sort of what the first step is, and it's coming at it from a different space. And I find that just doing that, it might not shift what's actually on your to-do list, but it shifts how you feel about your to-do list, because
And I
it
want to just
much stronger
interject
why.
there that I think to say, how do you want to feel, is a very female oriented question, in terms of setting a goal, because as like it's not just that you're creating a vision and an intention, but you're also bringing it into your body. And what do I really want to feel like today? What do I really want to feel like in my life? And I love that you asked the question that way.
Well, and sometimes I do want to just clarify that just because, let's say I picked like joy or something, right? Like something really good. That doesn't mean that everything on my to-do list makes me feel joy. But I then can pose myself the question, like, how could I feel joy while cooking dinner? If like, because I actually don't always, like, people are like, you must love cooking. Well, I actually don't love cooking. I love
Oh,
feeling
you're
well.
such a good cook. I have to put it on. I have been to 2 events. One was a big event where Mia did all of these amazing, delicious, no sugar, no flour, no nothing, and they were just the biggest hit. Like just the most amazing food. And then I've been to another event where she did a lovely vegetarian cooking, and so delicious, so amazing. Like the recipes that you have put together in your book are are fabulous, and especially for people who want to eat less sugar and want to be able to create snacks for their kids that they'll actually eat. And we'll get to that in just a minute. But I want you
All
to
right.
continue with your book here, and let me see where I can. Yeah, here we are. Let me share that. So go ahead.
Okay, so we're starting with that intention, and then we're moving into really finding our food, because so much of what we eat is just what we think we're supposed to eat, or we think what a certain stage prescribes. And I think that that's really dangerous, like especially for kids. Like think about what we think a kid's menu is, like even just walking in a restaurant. But also it can be dangerous with the healthy stuff, right? Like I'm just going to be paleo, or I'm just going to be whatever. So really finding the food that makes you feel good, I think, is really important. It's a really important step to do. And if you do have kids, I think it's really important that you do it for yourself before you do it for your kids.
And I think it's important too, because sometimes we think, well, you know, I need to be vegan, or I need to be a vegetarian, and some people really need to eat meat. I mean, it's
Yeah.
just, you know, and so to find what is right for you and not compare yourself with everyone else.
Yeah. And really like from that feeling space, I think that's why it's so important to
Yes,
figure out the feel part first.
yes,
And then the next thing, which is actually even more important right now than ever, I think, is finding a rhythm, really setting a rhythm. So once you understand how you want to feel and you find the food that actually helps you feel that way, really creating a rhythm around your meals so that it fits into your life. And so I think I'll just focus on what that looks like right now, because I could talk
yeah,
about rhythm for hours.
yeah,
But right now, one of the things that I'm finding is happening a lot is, you know, there's no boundaries between homeschool and work time and nighttime, and I'm hearing from a lot of people that meals are happening much later than they want, or lunch is happening whenever, and so the rhythm of meals can be like when you're eating and like when feels good, and just creating a solid rhythm of that. And it can also be make it easier to meal plan, which is, maybe every Monday night for dinner, you decide it's bean night, and every Wednesday night you decide it's soup night. And that's how the book is actually organized, is by sort of rhythms. And then, you know, people are always like, but that's so like constraining. But if you think about it, you probably pull from a repertoire of like 10 things, and you're like constantly alternating them. But when I have soup night, I don't go to my one soup that's on my list of 10. I'm like, oh, like what soup could I make? And I feel like I got more and more adventurous as I set this rhythm of like which meal was which day. And then the other thing about rhythm is like what happens around a meal, which is super helpful right now. So it's like before a meal, like you need to set the table, you need to cook the food. After the meal, you need to clean up. And like, what are all the things that do that? And how can everyone in a household be a part of that? And this right now is a very good opportunity to get whole house, like to not just be the only one doing things.
yeah. And I also one thing I really admire about my daughter and her husband is that that people can't eat in front of the TV. They have to sit down and they have to eat in the kitchen. And I think it's a very difficult thing to do. I have a difficult time with that. And of course you eat so much better when you are eating at the table and chewing your food and swallowing it, rather than, vegging out, with a TV program. But the other thing that you said that I thought was really interesting, you said, well, if you just make like Wednesday a soup night and Friday bean night or whatever, when you're planning it, you can be more creative than, okay, every night's pizza night because I don't feel like cooking. So you're actually you have more variety rather than more choices rather than less choices.
Yeah. Which is because a lot of us just get overwhelmed by all the choices. And so then we default back to like,
Eating the same thing every
the same
day.
thing over
Yeah.
and over, which is like what we think we're trying to avoid. So
Yeah.
sometimes when we can make it simpler that way, and it's also a way to hit health goals. So, soup might be healthier than pizza. So you can pick the categories in a way that, serve the way that you're wanting to eat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the next one, like, and I think going from, 5, 6, and 7 aren't as important, but the next one is really about just planning, which I think is super important to do, because without a plan, it's really hard to remember what it is that you want, even though you want it, because there's so much going on in our heads. So just making a plan for what you're going to have every week. And if you're just starting in a week sounds super daunting, just deciding the night before, like what the next day holds, or even in the morning, but just knowing well in advance of dinner, what is for dinner, I think is super helpful. And then the next thing, build your village. It's just sort of as you're setting an example, it really is contagious. So that's super fun, because the more people who are thinking about good food, the easier easier it will be to go to friends' houses and go to parties and all the places where you're like, but what if, because I hear all the excuses. And so as you do this really well for yourself, it does spread. And just remembering then to just sort of celebrate what it is you're doing, and telling your new story is the last bit of it all.
What is the new story? What is the new story that you are telling?
So, my new story was, who knew? Like, I had literally no idea that I was sick. Like, I had no idea how sick I was. I did all this to lose weight, which was a great side
You
effect.
lost 65 pounds or
I
something?
did. I lost 65 pounds.
And you've kept it.
Yeah, it's been 12 years, and I feel like the 44-year-old body's doing different things, and so you're always having to adjust and see what the right food is. But I feel great. And what was I going to say? But I ended my seasonal allergies. I was taking allergy medicine every single day of my life. I had to take hormone medicines to like get my period. That's been regular ever since. And my eardrum used to burst once or twice a year, which would get me on this antibiotic cycle. And I haven't taken antibiotics since. So it's been, 11 years of none of that.
Oh,
And like all of those things, I think, really also affect your gut, and they affect your cravings, and they affect all the things. So when we can really clean our system of all those things, it just, leads, I think, to a healthier, more energized life.
So have you always been naturally disciplined? Because I think the biggest question that people will have is, well, I know all the right things to do, but in the moment I don't want to do it. Like, how did you get
No, I got addicted to the feeling I was having. So I got but what happened is I got way more addicted to feeling good than any like piece of cake was worth it to me. And I just didn't know that I had that power. I really felt like I was destined to never feel good. Like I didn't really even know that until I felt good, but like I just got addicted to feeling really good. And the way that I did that, which I don't think I've said yet, is that for the first 3 months, so like literally, I'm not kidding, I did not know how to cook. I did not know how to cook an egg. I was taking everything out of boxes.
You wrote a cookbook.
I know, before this moment, I was like taking everything out of boxes. Like Trader Joe's was my best friend. Like I had all the things I liked for the kids. Like it was awful. I did marry a very good cook. So for the beginning of our life, he would cook all the time, but then he was working and he wasn't getting home in time for the kids. Like it was a mess by the time I started this. And so the way that a non-cook made it simple was I literally ate the same thing every day for like 3 months. And then I got used to doing that, and I got addicted to feeling good. And then eventually I got bored and was like, all right, now I have to learn. So then I took a cooking class, and then I learned 10 more things. And then, that led me to like being able to read a recipe, which I couldn't do before. Whenever anyone says they're overwhelmed because they are just reading all these recipes, I'm like, I couldn't even have done that. So if you can't do that, don't worry. Just learn 5 things. Mm-hmm. So I think we make it really complicated because we want it to look a certain way, and it might not look that way.
So I want to pivot just a little bit to lifestyle, the L in your flow system. Tell us a little bit about lifestyle and how to look at lifestyle.
How to look at lifestyle, like as a goal, as an area?
Yeah, as an area to plan in your life.
Well, so I think this is one of the things that I'm learning most actually now in this current situation. So lifestyle can get pretty out of control. Like I think we say yes to too many things that we don't care about because we think we're supposed to do them. And then we have these like urges to do all the things that we really want to do, but we don't actually have time to do those because we're doing all the things that we don't really want to do. And so it's really about getting really clear on what it is that you want in your life, what your family wants in your life, what your kids might want. And so, early on, one of our lifestyle things was no things planned on weekends. Like, so the kids never did little league. Like we just wanted freedom on the weekends, and then that changes eventually and kids start signing up for things. And one of the things I'm just learning right now being home is it's really interesting, like what things deserve the attention online, like what things really merit still showing up for given the current circumstances. And you can see where like I'm weeding things out, the kids are weeding things out. And so I think lifestyle is just about really making time for the things that matter most. And then eventually maybe saying no to things that don't matter as much to you. So it could be anything from like your home to, how you're spending your time.
So one of the things that you and your husband did for quite a few years, you've homeschooled your kids for a while, and then you also didn't have media in the house, like kids didn't watch. And that is a huge lifestyle decision to make, and I think would be daunting for almost any parent in the world really right now. How did you do that, and how are things now for you?
Okay, so it's not so different than food. And I think that this might be like, maybe not everybody has this personality trait. Like I remember once who wrote Gretchen Rubin, who wrote The Happiness Project. I remember her explaining that there's two different personalities, like one that would have a bar of chocolate and like be really excited that they could still have the bar of chocolate and just have a square a day, and another personality for whom that would be torture because they'd want the whole thing if they had any at all. And I think I definitely fall into that category. So I would much rather just not have the chocolate bar. I have figured out a way to have healthy chocolate, which is key to my existence. But
there's a saying where it's like one piece is too much and the whole bar is about it.
Yeah.
Right.
So what we found was not having a TV was way easier than like monitoring anything. And we just had read enough, and eventually like little 2-year-olds would press buttons. So eventually one day we just got rid of it, and we found we still had a lot to do. There were still many things to do without it. So as time went on, we started having there was really like no need to do anything. The oldest probably got the least, and he's in the other room probably listening to this and laughing. But he probably got
the least what?
He got the least media because, it was because, he then opened the media door eventually. But, while the kids were really young, we didn't want any of them to have it. So they just didn't have any of it. And eventually when we felt the youngest was old enough, we started having like a movie night on Fridays. But that was done from our computer. So we still don't have a TV to this day. Like we just don't have a television. We do still have Friday movie night. And my older
where do
two.
you show the movie?
What?
Where do you show the movie, or do you go out?
No, we show it in our house, and we stream it from our laptop. But we in the past 3 years we have a projector which projects on the wall. So it's actually like going to a movie theater. So it's actually really fun, and it takes some effort. So like you have to really have decided what the movie is and like thought about it. It's not like you can just like turn it on and do it. You have to have like decide. So I love all the obstacles that we've put in our way so that like we actually can show up and do this thing. There has been other media that's come in because I have now a high schooler and middle schooler. So, they have laptops and whatnot. So like definitely it's come in, but I feel, and I feel like it's pretty mainstream right now, the wait till 8 thing. And I think that that's just a really good rule.
So I have to ask you this question because I think this is the question that every mother or father, but especially mother, especially a mother who's maybe a full-time mother would ask. Then how do you manage like being able to get anything done in your household when
because
it's going crazy, and the one like respite that you have is that you set them in front of the TV and you could go take a shower or even go to the bathroom or something like that?
Here's the thing that I've personally found, and I think is pretty well studied, is
Okay.
that after a kid sits in front of the TV, they're a nightmare. And so, like, I even find this with movie night, right? Like, which we've decided to do. We've basically decided that it's okay, like, that afterwards, like no one's as well behaved and people are a little less centered and it's harder to go to sleep and all the things. But that is just, I think that's just very true of all humans. Like we don't realize it, but, and I think right now, stuck at home with the coronavirus and all the Zooms and the extra media, I think pretty much everyone can recognize what technology sort of does to them. So the thing is that it's kind of like changing the way you want to eat too. Like, yes, there's like a little rocky moment maybe of, I'm bored. Like, why can't I do it? Blah, blah, blah. But on the other side of that is true creativity. And true creativity is like hours of non-interruption. So whereas the TV might be a half an hour of a show, the other side of like, but I want to do this and I want to do that is like 3 hours of like making a book or reading a book or making some amazing drawing or, you know, all this talk play. Like there's so much amazingness on the other side of like a little bit of discomfort. Whereas I find that there's a lot more discomfort on the other side of the media, if that makes sense.
Because kids are out of control or more out of control. Just
Yeah,
like
and they're not in their bodies. Like the media takes us literally out of our bodies, and kids really need that. We all need the grounding, but some adults, you know, we have the tool, like we have the memory of grounding, whereas they don't have that yet.
so again, I'm just going to ask, because I know that this would be a question that I would have as a parent, is so like, okay, I can see what you're saying, that I'll actually have calmer kids, but then how do I get to that point where they're going to be like wanting their video games and they're going to be like wanting their shows and I'm going to be saying no? And how do I get from that point where it's going to be like, you know, complete chaos to utopia where everybody's a little happier? How does one do that? That's a
Well,
big transition for some people.
it's interesting, and you could link this before. My favorite person on this is Kim John Payne, who wrote the book Simplicity Parenting, and he speaks like amazingly on this topic. For me, like we never had it, so I actually didn't really have to do that. Though we do have it now. So my youngest is now 11, and all the school stuff and everything is all of a sudden in front of a computer. So we have had to like go full out and then come back a little bit from just that energy. And I just think it's again, it's why planning's so important. It's back to just having a plan, because when we're basing what we'll say yes to on the moment, and whether like we just need some time or we need to just like pay attention to something or we need to do this, we don't make as good choices. But if we have a plan, like, okay, I'm going to be comfortable with 2 hours in the week. Like I really want it to be these 2 hours because I'm going to do this, or I'm comfortable, you know, whatever your comfort level is. Then you can like stick to it with more conviction, and you'll just show up you'll just be able to show up to it better. And so you could figure out like, when is the time I really need it? And that's when they get it, not when they think they need it, but when you really need it. And then you can decide, like, you can start to notice like what happens to them after. And a lot of times we have to give more of ourselves after. So that's where it's like, you know, really deciding in advance and playing with it a little and just noticing and like playing detective and being curious about how it's affecting them.
When you say we have to give more of ourselves after, what do you mean?
Well, I just feel like in general, a kid needs a lot more attention after 2 hours in front of a screen, because their system is just all out of whack. So in general, they complain more. They want more food. They want more from you after that 2 hours than they would have wanted without it.
Now, I think that's really interesting that you know that, because I think that most people, you know, have never experienced that understanding because their kids have always watched media, right? So they don't even realize that after the media, something has changed, even though maybe on a subconscious level, they're like, wow, I just gave them, you know, popcorn and all this great stuff, and now they're flying off the walls and they're swearing at me, you know, or whatever. But you're connecting the two together. And by connecting those two together, you're actually saying there's a good reason to limit this, and a good reason. You're going to get a reward at the end. And it's not just going to be total chaos forever in your house.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
you know, the other part of this, and you know, it's kind of like what you did with food, is like, okay, the kids have their habits, right? And they're just watching junk TV or eating junk food. but then again, I have my habits, and how can I, because I got to be the first one to like make these changes, right? So do you have any tips for mothers on that?
On the media part?
Yeah,
I
yeah.
mean, that's hard. I mean, really, it is hard. And it's interesting because, I would notice that. Like I was like, and so a lot of it for me is really getting clear about what I'm doing. And even with food, I think this is really helpful. Like anything that you're changing. So a lot of times I'll just talk out loud. So I'll be like, I'm getting on my computer right now because I have to email 10 people, right? And that I have to do that for work so that I get a client or something, right? Like, so I actually like talk it out loud if somebody's watching. And I've done that for a while. And
Why
I
do you
don't know
do
that.
it when somebody's watching? What is the purpose of
Well,
that?
because I think that my kids used to think that I was only on my computer for movies, right? Because that was their relationship with the computer. So I think kids think that when the computer's open, you're playing the games that you're not letting them play, or watching the movie or the media that you're not letting them do. We're working, and so it's hard to explain that. If you use a computer for school, then you can compare that to school. I happened to send my kids to a school that didn't have computers in those early ages, so it was harder for them to understand. The second my middle child got to a school with computers, she very quickly understood, like, oh, like this isn't always easy. Like there can be hard things that happen on the screen too. But I'll talk it out loud, and the reason I do that is for them, but also for me, because if I'm like, okay, I'm going to sit down and email these 10 people, but then I open Facebook, I'm like, oh, shoot. Like I said, I would go email those 10 people, but actually I'm sitting down and I'm doing Facebook. And so that's really helped. The plan also helps. And, in this time, we've been doing a lot of focusing on how we're spending our time in my groups. And what's interesting is one day we just did this just map of like what the most meaningful things are right now, and like what we wanted to move forward with. And all of a sudden I realized that social media and news just weren't on it yet. There are things that happen throughout my day, so I'm like, I'm like not actually even wanting that. So why is that happening? Like I'm not choosing it. Like, do I need to plan some time? And in the end I realized I really do need to plan some time to check into social media, because I run a business, and sometimes I get comments. But I actually don't plan time anymore for news, and I'm not reading any news. And it's really interesting. And the way I get news is my kids and my husband will talk about it at dinner, and that's all I need. Like we get to have discussions.
That's quite true. That there was a period of time where I don't think I watched anything for like 8 months, and it took me 5 minutes to catch up on all the news.
Right? I mean, it can waste so much time in a day, but it really is a 5-minute catch up.
Yeah, yeah,
So.
totally. Um, and when you the other thing that you talked about with lifestyle, and this seems like in all of the different FLOW, the flow, lifestyle has a lot to do with values, the things that you value the
Yeah.
most. Not that the others don't, but it's really about. I love this one quote that you have. Let me just see. This is one of my favorite quotes in your book. Hold on. Oh yeah, this one. It's by is it Danielle Reed? True balance comes when we intentionally align who we are with what matters.
Yeah.
When we intentionally align who we are with what matters. And I was going to say there was one other one that I just love. That's what's so great about this book, is like every day has a quote, so that you can, really think about your day. And there was one other one. Let's see. Yeah, I don't want to waste the time by looking at that, but I love how you've formatted this. So let's go on to Om and spirituality and self-care, which I think is the hardest thing to balance as a mother. I remember when I was a mom, this was my inner monologue was, when am I going to have time for myself? When am I going to have time for myself? When am I going to have time for myself? And I would used to feel so badly, like, I'm with my kids, let me play with them. But it was always in the back of my mind, like, when am I going to finally have some time for myself? So tell us about how you handle that, how you deal with self-care and bringing things that nourish your spirit into your life.
So I think a lot of it was, and now I think is like a great time actually to diet, like to really think about this, because I find that right now, um, we're it's easier to get really clear on what self-care is for you. Like if you just ask yourself, like, what would really nourish me right now? It's less about, we can't go get our hair cut and we can't go get a manicure. And I think a lot of times when we hear the word self-care, we're thinking about these like
Get a
external things.
massage, get your
Yeah, right?
on. Yeah.
All the things. And they usually cost money, and we usually feel for some reason not worthy of them. But like self-care can just be like, I need fresh air right now. So I'm going to go outside and take 10 deep breaths, or I'm going to go walk around the block. Self-care can be like, I just need 10 minutes alone and I'm going to close myself in the bathroom or take a shower or whatever. Right. Like, so it doesn't have to be complicated. Self-care is that you're going to drink the water you're supposed to drink, or that you're going to actually follow the meal plan you made for yourself. So it can look like anything. The thing I think we also talk a lot about self-care is that we have to do it like it's a alone thing, because a lot of moms are craving that, right? We're craving time alone. So
Right.
like really getting clear on, I see that Bree's walking in the background. Um,
No, I love it.
the homeschool room's over there. Um, so really getting clear on what it is for you. And so if you do indeed need to be alone, then maybe it's that you find some time in the early morning. Like that's what I've been finding really has been working for me right now, is I'm waking up a little bit before. My son actually recently started waking up early too, but we sort of can coexist because what we both want is to be alone. So, we're both finding things to do in different rooms. But I write, I meditate, I go on a walk. Like that really nourishes me first thing in the morning. But one of the other things I've really learned during this time is like what part of self-care I don't have to be alone. So I've been doing these fantastic exercise classes with my girls. We've been sitting down and doing writing all together, like separately, but all together. Like, and I'm realizing like I don't need to be like closed in a room for those things. We've been going on nature walks together, and they're still very nourishing. And connection can be nourishing, right? Like connection can be self-care. Eating well can be self-care. Planning can be self-care. All these things can be self-care. It's just a matter of like prioritizing them.
You mentioned breathing. I want you to talk a little bit about that, because it's one of the simplest things that we can do, but we often think about it just like drinking water. We forget to drink water, and water and breath are the two main things that we live on, right?
Yeah.
Speak to that.
So it's interesting because I feel like the piece of things was like my last piece in the flow. Like that was the last piece to come into my life, which surprises some people, but it's just that wasn't like I wasn't exposed to some of the things that I got exposed to, like meditation and breathing and all this stuff. And I think a lot of times, especially in this this self-care category, this category, quiet, like we don't realize that a small amount can have such a big effect. So very often the things in actually don't take up much of our day, but when we do them, we can see how the whole rest of the day is different than if we don't do them,
Yeah.
whichever way I started with, right?
Yeah.
So one of the ways that I've found is really helpful is just, blocking out a half an hour where you are like, what do I need right now? And that could be 3 breaths that only take you 3 minutes. It could be that you walk, like just really get clear that at this time, but really understanding that there can be these like little 10-minute chunks, and that breath is a great thing to fit in. And it's just really practicing. It's really making the space to practice, because so many of those things are so easy to overlook because they don't take that much time.
One other thing that I was speaking with somebody about is how much in our world we dislike silence. Like we avoid it. We always want something on the background. And I was just thinking like one way to have some self-care is to take some time in the day where you turn everything off and just let it be quiet. Even music, just see what it's like without, anything on, and be with the feeling that brings up, which could be a lot of things,
Well, and I think that's scary to a lot of us, a lot of people. But it's kind of like the media. Like the media is noise, and all the things that we're doing and running around and doing is taking away our understanding of just being. And it's in that space of just being and sometimes being quiet that we actually know what we're supposed to do. Otherwise, we're just listening, we're doing what other people want us to do.
Yeah.
Whether it's like whether other people are like literally telling you, or they're telling you because you're, watching media and being like, oh, that's how other people do it, I should do it that way.
Yeah. The compare
Yeah.
and compare kind of thing. I want to also, because I think that this has been a stressful time. People have been filled with fear. People have been filled with, just extra stress, homeschooling your kid. Like who knows how to do that? You do, but a lot of people don't. But one of my friends that I interviewed, she just talked about one day she just went into her walk-in closet, turned off all the lights, and just cried for a half an hour. How do you deal with all the emotions that are coming up?
It's interesting. That, I mean, sometimes cry in the shower. I don't have a closet that I can sit in, but I walk. I like walking has been like my lifeline, I think, since we've been home. You're talking about right now, right? Like
I'm
the
talking
most.
about right now and in
Yeah.
general. Like, I think
Yeah.
the hardest thing as a parent is that your kids have emotions and they get to have them. And then as a parent, you've got to figure out how you can have your emotions about the emotions that they're having. It's just like this. How do you get the time to feel your feelings and to keep moving, to keep
Yeah.
moving, but still not deny that you're having a bad day and that you're stressed out.
Yeah. And I do that a lot through writing. So I definitely have a practice of like writing all the things out. And then I have a little way that I can sometimes turn them around, or sometimes just writing them out is fine. Cause I find in my head, and that's like actually the whole idea behind planning, but in my head, things are busier, things are more overwhelming, things are more complicated, things that are other people's are actually feel more like mine. But the second they get out on paper, I'm like, oh, like that's his thing. Like I don't need to take that on right now, or that's her thing, so that is the practice that I think saves me the most right now with that. And I've built in ways that we're all writing a bit. So that's been super helpful.
So your kids journal, is that what you mean?
Yeah, me and the girls have been taking an art journaling class. So we've been doing a lot of it sort of artistically. It's been really fun. It's been one of the silver linings of this whole thing.
Well, I have to say that, the way you describe your life and the way you describe your household and your kids, um, the way it sounds to me, if I were listening, as a mother, I would be like, oh, she's so good and she's so perfect. Do you ever fight with your kids, or they ever
Of course.
talk back?
I have two
What do you do
teenagers.
when that happens? Good. Let's get to the juicy stuff. Let's get to the real stuff. What do you do? How do you handle it when you're losing it and you're not talking to them the way that you want to talk to them, or you're moving into your own behaviors? How do you deal with that?
Well, sometimes I do that even though I don't want to, right? Like I'm definitely have yelled. But also I do find that a lot of the practices that I've built in are like, and those have been challenged even for me in this time of being at home, right? Like some of the things that I've just like, I have to catch me. Like one of the hardest things about right now is that it used to be that if somebody had a hard afternoon or a hard morning, like everybody dispersed for 7 hours and that like helped diffuse whatever was going on. And then you come back together. Right. And we don't have that right now because we're all always together. And that's where I think a lot of times, especially as parents, but really as people, we're always trying to control what other, like the outside world instead of just dealing with ourselves. So I think the thing that I most attribute to being okay in a lot of situations that I know other people might not be okay in is that I've done a lot of work about not making it about me and learning really how to do that. So if somebody doesn't like what's for dinner, that's not about me. Like that's about them not liking what's for dinner. If somebody is really frustrated, because we've had a lot of it's really hard for kids right now. Like everything, I mean, I can't even imagine being in middle school and high school and having the play that I got the role in be canceled. The boat that I have been wanting, I have a Sunny Rose crew, like you can't get on the water, like just so many things. And
Not
it's
be with your
hard.
friends when you're a senior and you're
Yeah, like to be with your
all of
parents. Like,
that. That's just, yeah. And that brings up something that's really important for us to realize. And that is that we're all mourning a loss. Like it
yeah.
is we are all in mourning right now, and that's very hard. And our kids probably don't even realize that they are. And I don't know if we all realize that, but there is this like feeling of mourning the loss of the life that we've had and the future that we thought we were going to get.
Yeah. And so I think that's just really important. And it's almost like we have to become like yoga teachers or something. Like we basically, our job right now, I think, and our job always is to be strong enough ourselves that we can like hold the space for our kids to do what they need to do and to go through what they need to do. So like I can't fix the play. I can't make things happen. I can't make people congregate again. I can't make it even feel easier right now when it feels hard. But I can give lots of hugs. I can give space when space is needed. I can be there. I can listen, and I can witness like awful tantrums, you know, and it's more about like, what do I need to do for myself to be able to do that? And what's interesting is on the other side of some of those things it teaches me so much. So I can give you two examples. You know, yesterday we had a hard moment about a play that's not happening. And what was needing to happen was we were needing to record, my daughter was needing to record something, and she wasn't even seeing how that was possible because she was having a hard moment. And I did for a minute go down the thing of like, well, maybe it's not possible. But then what I just did was I held the space as much as I could, and she wasn't seeing that anything could change for a while as the light was going away. And I knew it was like our, like, you know, moment. But then once she was able to regain her strength, we did it in like record time, and we found the most beautiful place to do it. And it was great. My son, who got super frustrated the other day about, you know, not feeling well and like not being, you know, the athletes are, you know, it's hard for them right now. Like you have to like do things in masks, and like he's doing stuff inside, and, you know, they're getting a lot of workouts and stuff, but it's just not the same. And out of that frustration, 4 days ago, he decided that on Tuesday he was going to climb Mount Everest. So get this, he found stairs in our town, and he climbed them from 5:45 in the morning until 11:30 at night, and he climbed Mount Everest. Like you can't do that. You can't figure that out from a place of not frustration. Like you couldn't have that idea without going through the frustration.
So what you're saying is that this difficulty that we're going through is that we have an opportunity to embrace our superpowers, something that we would not have been able to do or even think to do. We're now figuring something out to have a superpower that we didn't have before. And that's the only way you get your superpowers. You got to have a difficulty, right?
You sort of do. Like, I mean, if you think about all the amazing stories you hear in life, like there's always something that somebody's overcome, right? And so it's like allowing those little moments of difficulty, which are hard to allow because as parents, I think all we ever want to do is fix. And so I think
probably protect and fix, right?
Yeah. And so
responsibility, like you said, being responsible all the time for, I got to fix this for them, or I've got to make this smooth for them. What I'm hearing is that you stop doing that, or you step.
And so like now that I've said that whole long story to like, I'm not sure if I even answered the original question, but I guess like the thing that I think is most important, the skill that I think is most useful to cultivate is just the ability to listen without fixing. And that is hard work.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also think the one other thing I want to add, because I think this is really hard as parents, because we love our kids so much and we want them to love us back, you know? And so it's really hard to not take things personally when it's coming right at us and they know all of our weaknesses and they're, you know, pushing those buttons in us, to really not take it personally and to be the parent in the room rather than, oh, why did you say that to me? That really hurt my feelings, you know?
Yes, totally.
Yeah. 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 Well, listen, I know we need to get done here, be finished up here. It's been a little over an hour and I didn't know exactly where we would go. I want to just finish with one last question. And I know that we didn't really get to the work part of the flow, but that's okay. That we got what we needed to get through. what I'd like to ask you, what are three things you can't wait to get back into your life?
Hot yoga is definitely comes up as like number one. Um, what else? What else can I wait? You know, I am looking forward to. I, at the same time, it's like bittersweet. Like I'll miss it. I am looking forward to like just being able to work a day at a just having the choice to like go out of the house to get some work done. Um, and then for the kids, I'm excited, you know, for them to be able to return to some normalcy as well. Like it will be nice to see them in real life, you know, doing things.
And what are three things you don't want back in your life after this shutdown is over?
So I could do with less Zoom. I've noticed my Zoom capacity going up and up and up. I'm excited for like not everybody to be so dependent on Zoom. Um, I feel like I will be very conscious around driving because it's been so freeing not to have to drive so much, like so much time spent in cars. And I'm like, okay, that is definitely getting more efficient after this is all done. Um, and the other thing, which is less, I don't know how to say it in the way of not getting, of like, not letting it back in. I guess it's like unconscious spending. I find that this has been such a good opportunity to get really clear on where we're putting money. And it's because we're all in the same house. It's like, we're doing it all together. And so, you know, we've really been I'm such a like eat everything at home kind of personality. But one thing we've done is we've been getting takeout once a week to support a local restaurant. And like, it's more expensive than it used to be, but it feels so good. And whereas like, we're not unconsciously like going and getting coffees and teas and whatnot, you know, so it's interesting. It feels way more conscious, like where you're putting money, and you also have to be more thoughtful about where you're getting stuff, and you know, some things you can't even get right now.
Right. So, what is one thing that you've learned about yourself and your life during this lockdown?
Hmm. What is something? Um, well, I'm just really I feel like I've learned the most about um well, you know, actually those two examples that I shared with you of the acting and the Everest. I feel like I'm learning a lot from my kids. And just this idea that um time is so funny. It's like some things that we think about for so long, we make take so long. And some things, when we go all in and seem so big, can happen like that. And I feel like that's been true in all, like, across the board throughout this time. It's like, because you kind of do have to go all in if you want to do something, and it can just happen really quickly. And I'm having less tolerance for, you know, meandering through things. And so a lot of things are happening really, really quickly because we're putting our attention to them in a different way. And so I feel like that's something that I hope I can take back out after this as life gets back to normal, to really understand that.
And to address the emotionality of this time, where do you find hope and gratitude in your life right now?
Oh my gosh, I feel so filled with gratitude for right now. I don't know why. Sometimes I feel bad that I have so much gratitude for right now. Um, but definitely just in watching all the good that's happening around us, just seeing all the, you know, my daughter sewed a bunch of masks in the first week, and just seeing how everyone like can rally together to do something, to see just neighborhoods coming together and people wanting to support their town or their block or whatever. um, you know, I'm we go shopping for a few people who shouldn't be in stores right now. Um, and it's so like, I just feel like there's so much service happening out in the world, and because we feel like we have the time to do it. And I don't know, I'm really grateful for that we're seeing that humanness of everybody, even in a moment when I feel like we can't connect so much as humans, which is hard.
That is so, so beautiful. So, where can people find you, Mia, if they want to contact you? And I will put your address below, but would you just give us your email
Yeah.
address or your website?
Yeah, so my website is plansimple.com, And then on social media, I'm plansimple.co. So that's how I am on Instagram. And I do check messages and whatnot. I'm better at checking messages on Instagram than Facebook, but that's the address of both places.
And we didn't talk much about your work, but one of the things that you do is you do classes for people, no matter if they're mothers or not, but you specialize in working with mothers. Do you want to just give a real quick pitch on that?
Yeah, except you know what? Something really exciting is coming up. So can I tell you about that?
Please do.
So I am super passionate about the idea of 90-day plans. Always have been way before coronavirus. But right now, and this was planned before coronavirus, which was good timing, I'm super passionate about this idea of 90 days because I feel like that will free us from this idea that we lost all this time while we've been stuck at home.
Wow.
And so May 15th, 22nd, and 29th, which is 3 Fridays, we're running 3 full day events it's called the Art of 90 Days. And it's all about, I'm speaking with 30 experts about how to implement their expertise in 90 days, right? So I went with the things that I get the most questions about. So we're speaking with someone who's a plant-based specialist. So she's going to answer all about how to get more plant-based in 90 days. We spoke with a sleep specialist about how to sleep better in 90 days.
I need that.
We spoke with exercise. We did there's a whole day for entrepreneurs and different goals you might have as an entrepreneur and how you can do those in 90 days. And then there's a whole day on lifestyle. So that's parenting and there's manifesting on that day and relationships. We have an amazing relationship expert. So it's just going to be 3 fun-filled days. So that is really where I think it would be, and it's free. So if you can show up live for the days, that's free.
So where do people sign up?
So there's going to be a banner. By the time this goes live, there will be a banner on the top of plansimple.com where you can get to that page to get your ticket.
I'm there. That sounds so great. I attended your event it was November, and it was all about planning for the holidays, and it was amazing. I was so inspired by that.
It's like that, but on steroids.
That's great. That is so awesome. Yeah, thank you so much. I could just talk to you forever. You are so inspirational, and I know that people are going to be so inspired by this. And I also just want to invite people to go online and get your book. Your cookbook is so wonderful. I actually gave it to my daughter, and I really wish I could get you a new one for myself. So I'm going to have to get one for myself. But I just really appreciate your inspiration. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this conversation. It was so fun.
It's great. And I'm going to do a quick, before we get off here, I'm going to do just a really quick sharing my book that is on Amazon as well, and I'm just going to put that up once too. My book is it's called Playing You, and it's acting secrets that you can use in your own life. Where is it? Right here, I believe.
It's right behind you too, right?
It's behind me as well, but this is my book about being a star of your own life, which is what you and I are both doing with people that we're coaching and working with. So
good. And I can't wait to do I can't wait to have a live gathering all about your book.
We're going to rock and roll that when that finally happens. We were going to do a live launch for it, and just happened. So it's going to happen. And I'm trying to get Mia to do the food for it. So
fun. I can't wait.
So she does. So thank you, Mia. Have a wonderful day, and we'll be looking forward to May 15th, right? May 15th.
Yes, May 15th.
Okay. All right.
Thank
you so much.
Bye.
Bye-bye.